Welcome to the family meet. Here we come together with extended family members, friends, connected by blood or friendship, and explore the profound aspects of how important family is. They share some heartfelt stories and uncover some of the lessons and challenges that they had over the course of their experience. But at the core of our conversation is the vital truth that there is only one human family, and we are all a part of it. And with that said, I'm so grateful to be here with my brother and mentor, Ryan Stewman. Ryan Stewman, how you doing today, man?
Man, you got a voice for radio. I mean, you always look that's not an insult. Like you always look presentable in person too. But I mean, you have a good narrational. I should have got you to read my books instead of Danny. You got a good voice, man. So
Well,
appreciate you having me.
I think that is a great compliment, man. And I really appreciate. I just want to start with this because you, as my mentor, really drilled into my mind the core values of, we make no excuses. We do the work. We do what we say we was gonna do, and we go the extra mile. So that has really shaped and kind of provided me with a work ethic that has served me well. But I want to just go over a couple of questions. First, I want you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, my name's Ryan Stewman, and I've spent 21 years of my life in as an entrepreneur. And I've been in the finance industry for 21 years now. I started off doing mortgages
Mm.
uh, for real estate transactions, and then got into the buying and selling and holding of real estate, and then got into mentoring people in the financial business, and really that's like that's like a professional resume. Really, who I am, I'm the guy that started the social media marketing revolution. I'm the
Yeah.
guy before there was a Gary Vaynerchuk or a Grant Cardone or a Tony Robbins on social media. Those people existed. They just weren't the social media, mega influencers they are today. It was me. And a lot of those guys came through our camp 15 years ago. And almost every body that you see and I apologize in advance, but almost everybody you see that's pushing a course or has a mastermind or whatever has become as a direct influence of what I started back in 2010. It's crazy to say that, but it's the truth nonetheless. And so during that time in my life, I've not had it easy. I've been divorced, adopted, in and out of prison, and a bunch of other stuff, but I am proof that the American dream is real, no matter where you come from or no matter how you got started. And I'm very proud to say that, today I am a guy that owns a rather large financial business and a rather large business network. And I did it without borrowing money from banks or taking money from investors or raising capital or a handout from my parents or a single dollar from anybody in my family. And I built it all myself from scratch. And it's honestly one of the most impressive networks in existence. And I think I'm the only one to build something this big that doesn't have a corporation, company, or something behind them.
Dude, I can actually validate the truth, the authenticity of what you said, because when I first came across your content, nobody out there was doing the kind of things that you were doing. And it really resonated with my spirit. In fact, I think it was Elevated to the Top was the first piece that I really kind of dug into. But your content would speak to people in a certain niche in terms of if you're in a space and you feel like you've outgrown your environment and you feel like you need to be around other people that see it on a different level, you need to come talk with me. And nobody was doing that. And as a result of doing that, you built one of them, I call it a family of people, a community of people, like-minded folks, man, that are shaking things up. So hats off to you, brother. Now, I'm gonna ask what started you in this direction, though? What was the impetus that started you moving in this direction?
You know, um, a lot of people have a cool story about they had this idea and they chased this dream. And for me, I was doing mortgages and I was fairly successful at mortgages. In the mortgage industry, I was very successful. And President Obama, who I have a lot of respect for, is decided to pass something that was needed because of the stuff that George Bush messed up, called the Dodd-Frank Act. And Dodd-Frank was basically a overhaul of finances, and it created a new entity called the CPFB, which ironically Trump is in the middle of shutting down. This process, just so that people get a little history lesson here, because I'm glad to see it shut down, right? But this process, when they changed over to the CPFB, they made banks have to redraw all their documents. So think if you were operating off of good faith estimates and HUD-1, and now the government comes in and says you have to read all your documents are void, you have to redraw all your documents. It's millions of dollars from attorneys to do that, millions of dollars worth of software to fit the new stuff in. It was bad, but part of that was if you were a convicted felon, you couldn't get a new license. They took licenses from the state and made it federal, and I was still on federal parole at that time for possession of a firearm by a felon, and I was unable to continue in my career. So literally, the government is the reason I'm doing this, right? So shout out to those guys, I guess. But what happens is, okay, I'm making $300,000 a year. Okay. And you got to remember, this is 2008, 9, 10. This is the
Mhm.
worst time ever. I was
Right.
making $1 million a year prior to this, but I'm still doing okay. And and so now all of a sudden I don't have anything. But when I got out of federal prison in 2008, I started posting on Facebook about being top producer and that I was back in the mortgage business. And people started saying, hey, can you do my loan? Or hey, you think you could finance me? And I realized I was getting leads from my warm market on Facebook. So I come up with this idea: the more people I became friends with, more people know what I did for a living, the more money I'd make.
Right.
So, but I was just doing that for me. And then 2010 comes along, and this is a cool story because I can't do my job anymore, right? I'm the best at it, and I can no longer do it because of the government.
Mhm.
So I go meet with my friend, and I'm gonna ask my friend for a job. He don't know I lost my job. I ask him for a job, and before I can ask him for a job, he gives me these DVDs of these guys that built email list. And so I watched the DVDs, and he's like, you're kind of a tech guy. You could probably figure this shit out. And he gave them to me. And I thought, yeah, what they're doing is the hard way. I could do this. And this, again, it's 2010. I could do this on social media, and nobody else is doing that right now.
Mhm.
So I started an industry that didn't exist.
Mhm.
Now we can look back 15 years later and go, hey, thanks, Stewman, that's really cool that, this gift to the world or whatever. At the time, people were like, I never heard of that, I don't know anything about it. There's Facebook, that's not a real thing. Like, it wasn't today like it is. And so I'm trying to convince people. It's like, now, right now, we all know that artificial intelligence is the future. If I'd have
Mhm.
tried to convince you of that 2 years ago, you would have never listened to me.
Right.
So that's the situation I was in back then. But here we are 15 years later, because it was January when this happened, January 2010. So here we are 15 years later, and I was forced to start something, and it wasn't like I had this idea and chased a dream. I lost my job. So I feel like God was like, okay,
Mhm.
let's remove them from this, put them here, let them gain some influence and teach some people, and then we'll eventually put them back in finance in a different capacity to be able to make a bigger impact. Because I'd have never been able to make the impact I have today had I just been a loan officer.
Mhm. Mm. Interesting.
The,
Well,
the good part of that story, Robert, for the people listening, is that during that time when I lost my job, I was cursing God and everything in between, right? Like, here I am, I'm out of prison, I get my life together. Well, I shouldn't have been in prison the second time. I get my life together, I'm still acting good, still going to church, and now you taking my job too, and then maybe a year or two later, I lost my wife because of trying to build a business and and at the time, I'm like, man, I must be cursed. I must be like, God don't love me, life don't love me. I must have been born here to suffer, but I didn't quit. I get on the other side of that. Now I'm 10, 15 years removed from all of that. And it's like, I had to go through that in order to get where I am today. I had to shed some things. And I'm very thankful for all of those tough times that I sure as hell didn't want at the time. You know,
mm.
you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I know
I
exactly
sure as
what
hell
you.
wasn't thankful when I was going through them. I can be thankful for them now, but at the time I would have given them to anybody else. you know.
Tell me this, Ryan. What have been some of the greatest challenges that you faced in doing what you do? What do you consider to be some of the greatest challenge?
Well, here's the thing. Anytime a person, no matter who they are, anytime they stand for something, the first thing that anybody that is their enemy will do is attack the thing that they stand for.
Mm,
Okay. So let me give you an example. If you're a Christian and you say in on your bio on Instagram, it says Ryan Stewman, John 3:16 or whatever on there. And I go and I make a smart mouth comment on somebody or a derogatory comment on somebody's post. The first thing somebody's going to say is, "Oh, that's very Christian of you,"
uh-huh.
because I've taken a stand and they're going to use that against me, right? Even right. So I say that because the hardest part of my business is years ago I decided to be somebody that had value. So I had to define what makes a person valuable. And to me, I value people who are responsible, who can keep their word, they have integrity, people who are servants and good stewards of others, and people that believe in personal excellence. Now, here's the hard part about that. To me, and maybe to you listening, and to you, Robert, obviously, that seems like common sense.
Hmm.
These are make sense, normal things. But to most people, they say they want responsibility until a bunch of responsibility is dumped on them and then they can't handle it.
Hmm.
People say they want integrity until it's convenient to lie. People say they want to serve others until they decide to get selfish. People want personal excellence, but they don't want to work for it. And not everybody, but sadly, the large majority. So it's in any time that I have to correct somebody according to these values, they're automatically going to attack it,
Hmm.
my character, right? Oh, he says he like over the years, and the hardest part of the job is when you get to a point where you got thousands of people and not everybody is going to be happy with everybody. Anytime even coming from prison, most people get along, but there's always a few people fighting and causing problems, and they might incite the others to get in the damn problem too, right? So I have that in the network. Obviously, it's not fist fights, but it's bickering and arguing from time to time. And we have to remove people, and since it's such a public thing, it's a an embarrassment to them, and so a lot of times they attack my character or whatever the case. That's really been the hardest part. It's not so hard now,
Hmm.
'cause it's just part of the business and I'm used to it. But in the beginning, man, I took all that stuff very personal. I'm like, but wait, I'm the good guy in this, I'm doing the right thing, but I've been doing this so long that if it would be impossible for me to be a bad person or a scammer or not a good business operator and still be running the same
Right.
thing 15 years later.
Right.
It's impossible. You know what I mean? So,
I want you to share one of your greatest wins, but I want to touch on this because I've seen one win I've seen that has been exceptional, probably the grandest in the world that I've seen, is how you have taken a group. Because when we first got together, you probably had 20 or 30 contacts that were in your network. And that organization has grown to thousands of people that you actually have helped to mentor to level up and become higher degrees of success in their life experience. And the camaraderie, the bond that exists between those folks that are in that relationship, I see being family. For me, that is the epitome of what a family needs to be doing to help each other level up. So I really admire that part of what you've done. I consider that to be one of the greatest wins I've seen come from you because, dude, that has shook the world for real. But I want you to share what you consider some of your greatest wins.
it has it's difficult because in that family I'm dad. I have four children, and at any given day, one of them's pissed at me because I had to get them right. You know what I mean? Like that's just any. So every day of the week, one of those kids is going to be mad at me because I had to check their attitude or whatever the case, right? It's the same in the network. It is a family. We say it's a family of choice, right? You have your family of blood and family of choice, and it's a family that we choose to be in. But there's some people with some daddy issues from time to time and stuff, right? That's part of it. That is a big win for me, and it's nice to hear from you to say, hey man, we had like 20 people, and now there's like I don't even know how many, several thousand, and so that's really cool. I have had over at this point we're somewhere around 87,000 people buy our products.
Mm-hmm.
And that's attending, that's event tickets, phone sites, Apex, Break Free Academy. That's event tickets I've sold. So that's not the event tickets of the hundreds of events I've spoke on and
Mm-hmm. Right.
hundreds of stages. So but the best we can track it internally here, it's a little under 87,000 at this point, probably be over that at the end of the month. And, and that's impressive, man, because I grew up in a town of 2,000 and then moved to a town of 6,000 and still have a house in a town of 26,000. And this is four times the size of that,
Mm.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, in so in getting close to 100,000, getting closer every day. And the other thing, I guess, what I'm most proud accomplishment, Robert, of everything that I've done, and it's I have kept those core values through it all. And what I mean by that, this isn't some high and mighty thing, but look, guys, like, I've driven every car that you could, every poster you ever had on your wall growing up, I've owned it, right? That dream house that you have on your vision board, I've lived in it or owned it or still live in it and own it. The jet that you've always wanted to fly in, I probably leased it for a year, right? Like I've been on the celebrities you wanted to meet. I've smoked weed with them, got drunk with them. I mean, I've partied with rappers, boxers, fighters, NBA players, like everybody that you can think of that you've ever seen on a stage that you're like, damn, I've been up there with them.
Hmm.
From Deion Sanders to Paul Pierce to Emmett Smith to Jerry Jones to Mike Tyson, De La Hoya, Two Chains, Rick Ross, Master P, Fat Joe, you name it. I like I got pictures and proof with all the 50 Cent, you name it. I've been in those circles, which means cars, watches, money. I'm a 45 years old. I'm about 13, 14% body fat. I'm in good shape. And the reason why I tell you that is I've had a bunch of opportunities to shame my wife and kids. I've had a bunch of opportunities to make the decision to sell a crypto coin and rug pull my people or get them to invest in some bullshit and not really be just a way to take money from people or step out on my wife or decide to do drugs or decide I've had the opportunity and the money and the ability to do all of those things and I have chosen to do the right thing for God and the people every single time. So, for me it's like it's cool to make more money. That's awesome. Obviously, we need it to pay bills, but the ability to make more money and still have self-control when you can pay for not having self-control, to have those options and still stay limited to the options that a person chooses, that's real success. You see, if I want to let my kids down, I can just do something bad to their mother, right? If I want to let my kids down, I can just not show up. And my kids are the future, right? If I want to let Apex down, I can be the guy that stepped out on his wife or the guy that stole a bunch of money for people or the guy that left his core values behind. If I want to let people down, the path's right there in front of me. I
Mm.
know exactly what to do, but I've chosen not to do it. And let me tell you what, not doing that, the stepping out on my wife is not a problem. I'm madly in love with her, but not choosing to steal from people, lie to people, rob people, all the things we see in this industry, that's
Mm.
been hard because there's been a lot of times I need money.
Mm. Mm.
Chose integrity, and because I've chosen integrity every single time, God's never let me or my family miss a meal or a bill.
Mm. Man, that's deep, bro. Now
Yeah.
you've done because you've mentioned so many things, and I've seen you in action doing these things. It's not hypothetical, but with all that you've done, where do you see yourself going in the future? What's next for Ryan Stewman?
Well, this is probably counterproductive to my money making ventures, but um to one of them anyway, but I got to say it because it's the truth and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm building a finance business called Closer Capital. And I say building it, it's it's booming and it's quickly becoming my number one source of revenue, which I need. Not I need a what I consider a real business. As you know, we were in the software business for a while and got out of it, and did very well, made millions of dollars in that. Did the speaking business. I didn't like, I did that for a couple years, was on all these stages. I didn't like being away from my family and everybody always partying and stuff. Dude, I'm a boring guy. I get off stage, I go back to the hotel room. I didn't party with people, stuff like that. So then I started flying private. I'd speak and go right back home, man. So uh, I say that because what's next for me is to build Closer Capital uh, to $10 million dollars in funding a month. And we're not too far from that. We're on track probably by July, maybe August. and within the next 2 years have built closer capital up and maybe possibly sold it or have it cash flowing enough to make Apex free to the world.
Mm.
So my job is to be so hear me out, people listening. I started this industry of selling information on social media. I'm going to end this industry by being the guy that gives it all away on the way out for everybody to have, to never have to pay for anybody ever fucking again. So I will have started and finished this entire industry on
Wow.
my in my lifetime. If God willing, the plan goes correctly, but that's the plan.
Yeah, you got a plan. That is off the chain. Man, I put this process together and I asked you to come to the table because well, my mom passed the end of last year and our family used to meet on, we still meet on a regular basis. And I said, well, I want to share something of value with my family, right? Tell me a little bit about your family and what do you guys do to support one another and to encourage each other to move forward?
Um, so my blood family, like mom, dad, grandparents, I don't have a relationship with any of them. I haven't spoken to any of them in
Mm,
13, 14 years. I'm adopted. I cause a lot of trouble. They cause a lot of trouble for me, but I didn't have a good upbringing. So when I started having children, I'm like, hey, man, I got to do it differently than my family. I got to be better than that. And so, actually, before I had kids, when I was in prison, I wrote a plan on how I was going to raise kids. And so I had Jackson with, who's now my ex-wife. His mom's my ex-wife, but we have a great relationship. We get along, share the kid perfectly. But he's 13. Then Amy had a son from another relationship when we got together. Amy's my current wife, and she had a son who was a year old when we got together. About 5 or 6 years ago, I adopted him, so he's now my son too. And then we have two kids together, Colton and Harlan, which are 7 and 3. And so part of what we do, I have the biggest compliment that I get all the time is, man, you have good kids. And I do. I have some really, really, really well be I don't I mean, it's only because I just pour into them. Because me, I was hell on wheels when I was a kid, and my kids are very respectful. Now they're kids. They're wild. They got a lot of energy. They're loud, they're kids, but they're yes sir, no sir, shake hands. They're not, the adults do not intimidate them. They're not scared of anything. My 12, 13, and 7 year olds all drive tractors and heavy equipment on my ranch, four wheelers. My 3 year old's been driving a four wheeler since she was two. These
really?
are these yeah, these are not normal kids, right? Because we spend a lot of time pouring into them. But our kids go to private school and they live in the city during the week. They spend their weekends in our ranch in Oklahoma. Um, we they see their mother and I do date night every week. Amy and I go out away from the kids, away from everybody, and we do date night. So they're seeing how a relationship should
Mhm.
work between a husband and wife. We do family prayer and family huddle pretty regularly. We eat dinner together almost every night.
Mhm.
So, but here's the thing: I may not see my kids during the week. Like tonight, I may not be home till 1 in the morning, so I may not see my kids today. But they know that Saturday we're going to be at the ranch together and we're all going to be playing four wheelers and fishing or whatever we're going to do out there. And we're going to have a blast. And that's dad time. So they don't have the anxiety of when am I going to get my dad's attention again? They're like, oh, what day is it? Okay, cool. If I haven't seen him this week, he will be here Saturday, you
Oh,
know?
yeah. Yeah. That's powerful, man. Speaking of kids, man, part of the reason why I wanted to have this conversation because I see these generations passing, and many times the information, we live in the technological age where we can actually kind of capsulize information and pass it to generations unborn. If there was something that you can do or pass on of value for generations to come, what would be one of the greatest things that you can contribute?
The G code, no question about it. And I've done my part to give it to future generations. You can access the software for free at dailygcode.com. But the G code is the what I consider God's code for greatness. Um, God gave us a superpower. That superpower is focus. The superpower's technical term is the reticular activating system.
Mm-hmm.
Inside the reticular activating system, if you want to think about it in terms of strength, the focus muscle is in our brain, and it's called the reticular activating system. And the way that it works is when you activate it through a vision and through speaking, then you start to look for things. So, for example,
Hmm.
you go to the dealership and you buy a red Jeep. Never seen a red Jeep before. You leave the dealership, red Jeeps everywhere, right? Those red Jeeps been everywhere before. You just didn't have your reticular activating system turned on to find them. Okay. So focus is a superpower because when we start to focus on something, we find it everywhere, right? Here's most people's problem. They're focused on drama. They're
Uh-huh.
focused on trouble. They're focused on gossip. They're focused on negativity. They're focused on the political agenda. They're focused on their own bad situation, and you're going to get more of what you focus on. And but people like me focus on getting my next dollar, focused on being a better dad, focused on being a better person. I continue to keep getting those things, right?
Hmm.
Now, the code teaches you what to focus on. I broke it down to four things that we have to focus on a daily basis. And it's basically we have to focus on having a grateful mindset. We have to focus on our genetics, making sure we eat right, making sure we exercise, that we move, which is really big in America right now. We have to we have to focus on our goals, right? Our financial goals. How do we make money in our job, and what our financial goals are, and then the group of people that we spend time with, date night with the wife, Saturday with the kids, today with Robert, right? So every day I know that if I've focused on being grateful even for the trouble, I've gone to the gym and made sure that I ate healthy, I make sure that I'm accomplishing my goals financially, and then I make sure that I'm spending time with the group of people that matter the most every single day. I'm not going to notice a dramatic change in my life day to day, but it's just like going to the gym. One day you've been going to the gym 6 months, you hadn't really thought of it. One day you take your shirt off, or you get out of the shower and you walk in front of the mirror and you're like,
Man.
huh, what? Where did that come from? Or somebody runs into you that hadn't seen you 6 months and go, dude, you look amazing. What happened? And you're like, what? I feel like I look the same. But you don't, because you don't see it. The G code's the same way. You look up in 6 months and you're like, man, I'm actually starting to accomplish those things that I was focused on. Man, I'm actually starting to get this is working. It's compounding. It's not going to work overnight. It's not going to work in a month. But let me show you something, ladies and gentlemen, just to put it in perspective here. If you can get 4 points a day, okay, then with my, let me pull this up here. If you can get 4 points a day, okay, I've got 7,016 points on here. I have been 2,037 days. I have been doing this. And out of 2,037 days, I have put 2,000 entries into this thing. So I've only missed 37 days. That's when I broke my neck, if you remember, Robert.
Mhm. I remember that. I remember that. Dude, that's profound. So the consistency over time creates outcomes that are phenomenal, almost miraculous.
And if you don't believe it, go back 2,037 days ago and look at what I was saying on Facebook and YouTube and all that. And you're going to be like, oh, wow, that's a different guy.
You're right about that, man. Now I know you've never really met many of my family members. My son came to a couple of our events, and my ex-wife as well. But if you could share anything with my family, one thing that you could share with them that you believe that would be beneficial for their well-being, what would it be?
I'll take it back to that G code for this reason. If you'll get to where, like, Robert, you've been fortunate enough to, your older years in life, technology show up on the scene and you embrace it. A lot of folks at your age didn't embrace technology. So you'll be able to leave stuff like this behind. So will I, obviously. Um, but your family needs to carry that tradition, and the G code, for example, the daily G code, the software, you're putting your daily entries. Imagine getting that like a diary, 100 years from now, your great grandkids or your son's great grandkids starting to read, go, this is how he became successful. This is how he lived his life. This is how he built what we're now in charge of
Mm-hmm.
today. And even if you don't use G code, at least posting what the stuff you're doing on social media to where they'll be able to go back and read that. You know, because here's what that's going to do. A, it's going to motivate you to do the right stuff because now you're doing this and leaving a blueprint for your future generations. And B, those future generations are going to be able to see you change your life and go into that direction and make it a reality. Because here's the truth. If you change your life and go in that direction, it's only a matter of time before it's a reality. It's
Yeah,
not going to happen as fast as you want. It's not going to happen easy. It's going to happen and then there's going to be a setback and it's going to happen again. But if you will stick to it, it is impossible to lose.
dude, that is profound. If you'll stick to it, it's impossible to fail. Man, dude, I really appreciate you sharing this time with us. How can people get in touch or access your information? Where can they go to reach out and consume some of your content?
You know, I'm on Facebook and Instagram, Ryan Stewman on Facebook. Both of the sites I have the blue check on there, so that you know it's me because there's a lot of imposters, unfortunately. But Hardcore Closer on Instagram, Ryan Stewman on Facebook. You can search Ryan Stewman on both of them and find me, but just connect with me there, follow me. I'm always putting out good content. So
Dude, I'm gonna come out there to the ranch one day, man. I know one of your guys contacted me about some event you had happening. Definitely gonna look into
yeah,
that. Dude, I sure
me and you
appreciate
can
your
go
time.
fishing. We just need to pick like a Saturday where me and you go out there and just like put a pole in the water and shoot the shit for a couple hours.
We gonna get that done, my friend. Again, I
Yeah.
want to thank you for taking this time out to share with me and the family meet. You said something to me once before, and I'm gonna stick to that. That is, we doing life together, dude. We doing life together till one of us leave. And then I'll see you
Yep.
inside.
Yep. Well, we
All right,
definitely got to fish together too, man. So stay in touch.
we'll get that done.